Now first, there are some rare things coming up this morning. Good news. They're calling it the Olympic effect. Between July and September, the economy grew by 1%. That's the highest it's been since the third quarter of 2007, when Labour were in power. Compare that to the previous quarter, between April and June, when the economy shrank by 0.4%. These latest figures do, however, include ticket sales for the Olympics and the Paralympics, which certainly boosted the numbers. Nevertheless, it does officially bring to an end the double-dip recession, at least for now, for the previous 9 months. And I'm joined now by the Shadow Chancellor, Ed Balls. Welcome back to the Daily Politics. Now, unemployment's down, inflation's down, retail sales are up, the deficit's better than we thought this year, growth is now bouncing back. This must be a very distressing time for you.
It's good news, and I have to say, about time. The economy's flatlined for a year. We're finally getting some growth back. We should have had growth for the last 2 years. The deficit should be coming down. But after the last 2 years, let's hope we're starting to move into a better phase. But I think it's very complacent to assume that.
Right, so what are you assuming then? Is this just a blip, or is it the start of growth? Not spectacular growth, probably, but growth.
Well, that's the question.
What's the answer?
No, but is it going to be a strong and sustained recovery? As you said yourself, take out the Olympics, take out the bank holiday effect. There is growth.
The Jubilee effect, which took away from Q2.
Yeah. Take that away. The underlying position in this quarter is weak, but it's positive. There is growth, but it's nowhere near good enough. We're not going to get investment moving and living standards rising and our deficit down on 0.2 or 0.3% growth. So the question is, how do the next 12 months, the next 2 years look? And my worry is that George Osborne and David Cameron are going to cross their fingers and hope for the best. I think that is really complacent. Look at the Eurozone. Look at the hit coming to family budgets. Look at the worry in the business world at the moment about investing. I think it would be better and more cautious to do a bit more to get this recovery moving, and I don't think we're going to get that. That's why I'm still concerned.
But the IMF is predicting growth of just over 1% next year. It's hardly spectacular, but
it's nowhere near good enough.
But it is growth, and if you strip out these special factors you mentioned in Q3, the Jubilee impact, which was negative in Q2, the Olympics positive in Q3, the underlying rate for Q3 would seem to be about 0.3%. That is an annual growth of just over 1%. It's consistent.
It's nowhere near good enough. If you think the last 2 years, George Osborne said he'd get 4.6% growth, and he's got 0.6, like a fifth of the level of Germany or America. So we've got worse off, and the question is, are we going to catch up? The reason why the deficit is going up this year is because of that weak growth, that flatlining. So he needs to catch up that lost ground. And, at 0.3%, 1% a year, it's going to take us, a generation to catch up that lost ground. That's not good enough.
But are you still claiming that the government's cutting too fast and too quickly?
Too
fast and too much, I should say.
Well, look, go into the next year and ask yourself the question, with the Eurozone in real trouble, with China slowing down, with all these worries in the world, is this the time for Britain to have the fastest attempt to get the deficit down we've seen in the last 100 years? I've always said I thought that was very foolish and risky, and a more balanced approach was more likely to work. Their approach has not worked in the last 2 years, and they're now crossing their fingers again. I think it's very unwise. And to be fair, the IMF said exactly the same thing at their international meetings 2 weeks ago.
Well, the IMF said only change plans if you don't get any growth at all, but it looks like they're on the IMF track of anemic growth.
Come on, Andrew. The IMF first said that 12 months ago. How much growth have we had in the last 12 months? Zero. The IMF, if we'd taken their advice 12 months ago, we would not be having this anemic recovery now.
But the IMF said the government should only change policy if growth doesn't return to the economy. Yeah. Growth has returned to the economy, so the IMF is still backing what the government is doing.
The IMF said that 12 months ago.
I mean, the most recent report said if growth should fall significantly below current projections, and remember, it's only projecting 1%, countries with room for manoeuvre, that means Britain, should smooth their planned adjustments for 2013 and beyond. Well, growth hasn't fallen significantly below the projections. So it's still on policy.
When the IMF first said that, they were projecting twice that level of growth. And they've been downgrading their growth, and we've still been undershooting. And are you confident we're going to meet that growth figure next year? The Chancellor is not confident. The Bank of England Governor is not confident. The Prime Minister, I have to say, seems deeply complacent about the economy. I think the cautious thing to do is to actually get on, build some houses, use the 4G money, get young people back to work. Let's do something to, where is George Osborne's plan?
How much has overall government spending fallen since Labour left power?
Well, look, part of the problem here is it's gone up because of welfare spending's 20% up.
No, overall state
unemployment spending.
Overall state spending has fallen by £16 billion. It's 2.3% of total spending.
Really up there.
So 16, I mean, it can't, 16 billion cut in spending doesn't make that much difference. I mean, under the Alistair Darling plan, departmental budgets were to fall 2.2% a year. Under George Osborne, they're falling by 2.8%. The fact is that I know that you and Mr. Osborne like to play up the huge differences. When you drill into the figures, you're actually not that far apart.
The last time I came on and talked about Ricardian equivalence, your viewing figures plummeted. So I'm not going to get into that debate again about expectations. But the reality
Mr. Ricardo's quite pleased too.
We said 2 years ago, because of our Chancellor's decision, we'd have earlier and bigger tax rises and spending cuts. Confidence collapsed. The economy went into recession, and we've not seen the kind of investment we need. And as you say, quite a lot of those spending cuts and tax rises are still to come.
Exactly.
Unless you're a millionaire. If you're a millionaire, you'll get a tax cut. Everybody else is going to be paying more tax next year.
No, if you earn $1 million, you get a tax cut. We've been through all that before. I'm just trying to teach you the difference between income and wealth. I've done that, so let me not go there.
I think it's a very good debate for us to have. Okay, no, let me ask you. I want to apologise. I didn't quite speak correctly. If you are a person in our society who earns £1 million next year, you will get 40,000 back. You'll pay 40,000 less in tax.
All right, we've done all that.
It's huge.
I'm glad you've taken the correction.
And pensioners are going to pay more.
It affects
Where's the fairness in that?
It affects 6,000 people.
I know. They're going to get quite a lot of money, aren't they?
Yeah, but I don't want to go there. I'm tempted.
It won't be you or me, Andrew. It won't be you or me.
Certainly won't be me. And I'm pretty sure it won't be you either.
No.
There is still this great fear, and you see that in the lack of trust people have in you and Mr. Miliband to run the economy, that you just borrowed too much in the good years and spent too much. Now, you told Andrew Marr that you said, your exact quote was, I don't think that we had a structural deficit as the boom years came to an end. Do you still stand by that?
Look, we've discussed this many times, and I've been very clear about what the position is, and you and I have before. Going into the downturn in 2006 and 2007, the Treasury figures and other figures from other economists were not, at that time, there was a structural deficit on the current account, excluding investment, and our national debt was low. What happened subsequently with the financial crisis, if you go back and say if the economy was weaker, in retrospect, clearly there was a structural deficit at that time.
No, you told Andrew Marr that there was no structural deficit at that time. 2007.
As perceived by policymakers.
But you were wrong.
As perceived by... Well, of course, the whole...
So you were wrong. But you told them that... No, hold on. You told them that in 2011.
Yes.
You told them that in 2011 there was no structural deficit.
I stand exactly by that.
But there was.
No. The point is, did Mervyn King, as governor, did the Chancellor at the Treasury think at 2007 there was a structural deficit?
Look,
they didn't.
I'm just asking you. You told Andrew Marr in 2011 that you didn't leave behind a structural deficit. That there wasn't a structural deficit before the financial crisis.
I didn't say that.
You did. That was your exact words.
I didn't say that.
I don't think we had a structural deficit then. He asked you about 2007. We now know from the IMF the structural deficit was 5.2% of GDP. You were, just doing the calculation, you were £73 billion out.
You and I have discussed this many times, and I am being completely consistent on this point. But at the time, in 2007, did we... See, Andrew, let's be clear. The charge is, in 2006-07, Labour was being irresponsible, given the figures available. The answer is that at that time, given the figures available, there was not a structural deficit on the current account. In retrospect, of course there was. I've never denied that.
I just want to go through this again. You told Andrew Marr 4 years after 2007 that there was still no structural deficit.
I didn't say that.
We now know that there was a £73 billion structural deficit.
Andrew,
would it not be wise just to say, I was wrong?
Look,
I got it wrong.
You've got to not simply stick to the Tory briefing line, who are
Excuse me, I'm getting this from the
trying
IMF.
to make that point.
I have not read the Tory briefing. I have not spoken to the Tories.
A year ago,
I've read the IMF document. They said there was a £73 billion structural deficit. You told Andrew Marr there was none.
Come on.
You were wrong. The IMF was right.
A year ago, and I can give you the exact quotes, I said, and this is exactly what I was saying on the Andrew Marr programme as well.
Okay.
Of course, in retrospect, there was a structural deficit, but did policymakers think there was one at the time, which was what I was saying to Andrew Marr? Absolutely not. And look, the whole world, including Britain, got that wrong.
Okay.
Of course we did. Of course we did. But are you trying? Did I say something in 2011 to Andrew Marr which I now need to correct? Absolutely not.
Well, I'm at a loss as to why you don't need to correct it, but I've been told you have to go elsewhere.
Really?
Yeah.
Look,
then I have to let you go.
Happily stay.
You will?
Yeah, we could talk about the bank bonus tax for youth jobs
No.
and my infrastructure
I want to
plan.
come back to
We'll
this
come back
because,
again.
I mean,
We'll
the
come back
facts
again.
do matter. If you don't have to go, let me keep you for another minute. This is the exact quote.
Yeah.
I don't think we had a structural deficit at all in that period before the recession.
Exactly.
i.e. 2007.
That's right.
We now know from the
Of
IMF
course.
you had a structural deficit of 73 billion.
Exactly. But both those things...
both can't be right.
They are, look...
Both can't be right, Mr. Bowles.
Let me explain the economics
Okay,
of this.
I'll give you the final word.
Look, in 2007, was there, at that time, as policymakers saw the world, a structural deficit? No. And I said that to Andrew Marr. I did not... His question to me, which you mustn't take out of context, is, should you have acted differently in 2007? Well, at the time, the answer is no. In retrospect, because we now know the world was different, of course there was a structural deficit.
So you had one and you didn't know?
Yes.
Okay.
Of course that's the case.
So what you told Andrew Marr was wrong, but you just didn't know?
No. What I said to Andrew Marr was there a structural deficit at the time as perceived by policymakers? No.
There's two very heavy men waiting to drag
Goodness
you to another
knows what your
studio.
viewers think of this, I have to say.
Oh, not at all. This is very important because it goes to the heart of the focus groups on your record. They think you borrowed too much. You told us there was no deficit. There now was a huge structural deficit. So it's quite germane to Labour's positioning and your personal positioning on the economy. That's why I've enjoyed and extended the conversation on it.
In 2011, I said to Andrew Marr exactly what I'll say to you now, which is, had we known in 2007 what was going on in the financial services industry, had we acted then with tougher regulation, we could have avoided the structural deficit, which in fact turned out to be there. But that is something you only learn in retrospect. That's the nature of economic policy making.
Shed any light on this?
Well, I think what you may have meant to say to Andrew Marr was, I didn't think there was a structural deficit. But what you've been quoted as saying is, I don't think. So
but
that might be the heart of the problem here.
Yeah, but every quote, I've said this so many times, including on your programme, very, very many times, and so therefore, you could always take a set of words and say, did he really mean to say this or that? Okay. I've been very consistent on this for 2 years, and I'm very happy to defend my record. And if George Osborne would come on your programme, maybe he could defend his record. Why doesn't he ever come on?
You have raised the most interesting question of the day.
No. I'm looking forward to the Sunday Politics with my third time.
Yeah.
Why doesn't the Chancellor ever come on?
We're already in training for it.
Where is he?
I have no idea.
Why don't we have a debate, me and George?
Me.
What do you think?
I'd love my day.
I'd love it.
All right. Ed Bowles, thanks for being on today.
Always fun.
Good to see you.
See you later, Ross.
See you, Ed.
Now,